Mr. Sabo, did you want to respond to what Mr. Heinrich was saying a minute ago? I sensed that you were wanting to respond.
Which comment?
In response to my question just before we went to Senator Klobuchar. If not, that's fine. I've got another question for you.
Yeah, just real quickly. When we're looking at the definition of market, if the argument is that money has been flowing away from television, radio, and print media to online ads, then clearly those are interchangeable goods for the definition of market. And they are clearly interchangeable goods means that the definition of marketplace must include all advertising. We can't just narrowly define it to be Google. Because, yes, if you define the market as Google, guess what? It's going to be a monopoly. And that's kind of what you saw out of the CMA report in the UK.
Okay. Mr. Sabo, I have heard complaints from news publishers on occasion that they're struggling because they can't adequately monetize their content due to what they characterize as Google's monopoly. Do you think it's also possible that they might be struggling because the news industry is itself infected with widespread bias, and many Americans simply aren't inclined to spend their hard-earned money or their time reading biased reporting? Is that a possible explanation?
I think one of the biggest challenges that news media is facing today is the number of options available and the fact that the notion of a reporter could be somebody as simple as having a camera and a cell phone. And the conception of a newsroom being the alpha and omega of where we get our information, I think has gone away. And that's an outgrowth of the democratization of speech. Now you can have something like a Drudge Report, or you can have something like Huffington Post. Those are not legacy newsroom industries, but I would definitely say that they are news agencies or information sources. And so that's the thing is, yes, maybe some of the old legacy industries need to change and update, and I hope they do. But at the same time, we have seen the New York Times and the Washington Post do quite well recently, so clearly they can make it through. And yes, it's going to be harder for local news agencies when I can go to moviephone.com and not have to open up the newspaper to get the movie times and stuff like that.
Okay. Right. They've called another vote. We're going to have to wrap up here in a second. I do have one more question I want to ask all three members of the panel to describe to me briefly. If in fact Google is operating its ad business in an anti-competitive manner, what would be the appropriate remedy? We'll start with you, Mr. Sabo, then we'll go to Mr. Dinelli, and then we'll finish with Mr. Heimlich.
If, under the circumstances that evidence were to be shown that Facebook not only has monopoly power, abuses that monopoly power, and causes consumer harm, I think the remedy would be the least damaging to the entire ecosystem if it's an interoperability fix. I think the smallest fix that we should shoot for would be the best one. A breakup or threaten a breakup will be detrimental not only to the ecosystem, it will increase prices and it will decrease efficiency. One of the things that's often misunderstood about Teddy Roosevelt is, at the end of the day, he didn't really want to break up the oil barons because he recognized doing so would just create 1,000 small oil companies, all with decreased efficiencies. So if a remedy is sought, it should be the smallest remedy possible.
1 week, right? 2 weeks.
And I do cite to that Teddy Roosevelt quote in my testimony as well. Okay.
So you would say a non-divestment requiring remedy geared at specific conduct?
It should be the smallest change possible because the unintended consequences and downstream impact to all consumers.
Mr. Dinelli.
Thank you, Senator. I think one difficulty in designing remedies is oftentimes the process of enforcing the law is what teaches us exactly what is wrong, what has gone wrong, and how the best fixes might be developed. So my answer, Senator, would be we need to start with the most vigorous enforcement of Section 2 of the Sherman Act as we possibly can. And that enforcement action, in my view, must include both the search market and the digital ad market. We've heard a variety of people testifying today about the connections between these two markets. I could explain them in detail if we had the time, but I know we're wrapping up. But I will say that is the place to start. We should see what that evidence is that the Department of Justice has gathered. We should examine it. We should read the complaint, and then we should have further hearings. If during the course of that enforcement action, there are opportunities to think about additional changes to the law, we should enact them. If there are opportunities to provide additional authority to regulators, we should provide them. But we must start with the enforcement action and the disclosure of all of the evidence that's been gathered over the past 16 months.
Yeah. Finally, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you. I agree with everything Mr. Dinelli said, but I'd go even further. I think this has gone on so long, unfortunately, that the remedy is going to have to be very significant. Some breakup or forced interoperability between search and the ad tech market, yes, but we can't forget Android and Chrome. It's an enormous amount of data that's playing in this market and really fits the same pattern of non-ad tech products feeding Google's power in the ad tech marketplace.
But the ad tech is where the revenue comes from, right? I mean, is it something like 85, 90% of the revenue?
But I'd say, yeah, Google makes most of its money from selling ads in search and YouTube, and then they use that data to dominate the ad tech and exchange market, right? So easy solution is separate those. But the deeper you go, the deeper I've researched, I'm concerned that there's significant data from Android and Chrome also being tied into this ad tech market, such that even if you separated search and YouTube from ad tech, they would replace what they had already done with data from Android and Chrome.
Okay.
Yeah.